In today's session, we're going to continue the discussion of Ma'alat Nashim by Gedalia ben Yahya from Italy, 16th century, and then continue to other sages from the 17th century on. So, as you recall, we had discussed Ma'alat Nashim by Rabbi Gedalia ben Yahya, which is divided into three parts. In the first part, he mentions 39 women from the Tanakh and from post-biblical period, 37 from the Tanakh, and then in addition Yehudit and Beruria, each one with their own character traits and praises. Then he writes 24 arguments in favor of women, showing them as superior to men. In the third part, he presents 10 sayings by the sages, by the Mishnaic and Talmudic sages, which speak in favor of women. And he says, I only wrote 10 and not more because I didn't want to go into great length. He says in Hebrew, "Umali od le'arich, ki Hazal asher haya bi'adam kabbalat emet, he'idu alea bechama mekomot." Why would I go into great length? The rabbis, who are the transmitters of the true tradition, have testified in several places that this is the case, that women are better than men. And you can find many similar statements in the words of the sages, and therefore I don't want to write them here. Now, he also struggles with the verse of Kohelet in Kohelet 7:26. I find that the woman is better than death. And he says that this does not apply to all women, but only to certain ones that maybe Shlomo HaMelech had an issue with. And just as among women you could find some who are not good, so also among men there are some who are good, some who are not good. And Grossman comments here that other medieval sages use the same argument. For example, Rabbi Yitzhak ibn Giyat, in his commentary to Kohelet, says, "Velo nitkaven leta'er kol hanashim bichlalutan." This statement of Kohelet, "Umotzani ta'isha mar mimavet," does not refer to all women. Ki ech efshar uchar matzanu behen haneviot hasidot. It is impossible. We have already seen in the Tanakh that we read about the prophets, the prophetesses, and the pious women. And eventually, Gedalia ibn Yahya concludes. He concludes, "En omer ve'en devarim neged zeh hadarush." There are no arguments that could be brought against my book, which speaks in favor of women. And even my opponents, or the opponents of women, must answer amen against their will and say that women are greater than men, and they have ma'ala gedola v'chaviva, they have a precious and great advantages. And therefore, it is written in the Torah that the sons of God sought the daughter of men because they are good. In that part, Grossman comments, and it's true, we see that Gedalia ibn Yahya was programmatic, had an agenda in his attempt to glorify women, because he says, I only bring 10 statements from the rabbi in the favor of women, and there are many more. As a matter of fact, that we don't really have that many. Mostly in the writings of the sages, of the Mishnah and the Talmud, the attitude towards women is negative. It's a departure from the approach of the Tanakh, which is generally more positive, but definitely more positive than the contemporary culture of the Tanakh. But in the writing in the time of the Mishnah, probably because of Greek influence, the negative attitude towards women became more center stage. From here, we're going to go back to Rabbi Yaakov Chuli and his Me'am Lo'ez. In Me'am Lo'ez on Bereshit, commenting on the pasuk of that describes Rachel giving birth to her second son, and when she gives birth, they say, Al tir'iki gamze lach ben, do not fear, for this is also a son. He speaks about the practice of women in Turkey to not tell the mother who just delivered the baby whether it's a boy or a girl. And why is that? He says this, y usanza de las comadres is de no digir hijo u hija, hasta que riposa la pareda de sus dolores. Y usanza, the custom from the word use, they're not used. The usanza de las comadres, the custom of the midwives, is de no digir hijo u hija. It's not to tell the mother if it's a boy or a girl. The exact opposite of what happens today. The moment the baby is out, you say it's a boy, it's a girl. In most cases, people know beforehand. But they wouldn't tell the mother whether it is a boy or a girl. Hasta que riposa, until she has time to rest and recover. La pareda de sus dolores. The mother has a chance to recover of her pain. Que hay algunas que se toman tzar. Some of the mothers have feel sorrow. We use the word tzar in Hebrew. Feel great sorrow. Sabiendo que es hija, when they find out that they just gave birth to a daughter. Y pueden morirse siendo están en sacana grande, and because of that they could die and are in great danger. Later on we'll see that the Ben Ish Hai, Rabbi Yosef Haim of Baghdad, addresses the same phenomenon, but he defends the women, defends the daughters. So we have some kind of progress. Even today, we know that in some countries, people prefer having boys over girls. Some prefer and don't say it, but in the time of Rabbi Yaakov Chuli, that was such a prevalent concept that women were afraid to tell the mother who just delivered the baby whether it's a boy or a girl. From here, our next paragraph is written by Rabbi Haim Ovadia of Morocco, who was born in Morocco and died in Israel, who mainly worked in the 18th century, was born 1696, died in a young age, 1743. His commentary on the Torah became extremely popular, especially among the founders of the Hasidut and the followers of Hasidic sects. They really love his commentary, and his commentary is full with there is the spirit of understanding of the human condition, of emotions. One of my favorite examples, when you look at the commentary of Rabbi Haim Ovadia, is of the blessing that Yaakov gave to his grandchildren, Ephraim and Menashe. The Torah says that when Yaakov saw Yosef coming with Ephraim and Menashe, he asked Yosef, Mi ele, who are those? And the commentators struggle with that because it is hard to understand the question. If Yosef comes to visit him with two young men, they must be his own children. Even if Yaakov couldn't see that well, he should have known that those are the sons of Yosef, and there are many answers to that question. But Rabbi Haim ben Ovadia offers an original answer. He says that Yaakov knew that these are the sons of Yosef, but he wanted Yosef to say it. Why? Because when he says in his words, when the father says, "This is my son," his love for his son is expressed, and at that moment, the grandfather Yaakov feels greater love to his son and to his grandson. So this is, according to Rabbi Haim ben Ovadia, an attempt by Yaakov to augment the feeling of love and compassion in the room, just by saying, "Who are these? These are my sons." Just to say the words, "These are my sons." So this is the kind of approach of commentary that Rabbi Haim ben Ovadia shows in his commentary. He's also steeped in Kabbalah. but also comes from the point of view of trying to defend, or to judge favorably people. So it's especially interesting to see what he writes on Bereshit Bet Yudhet, Genesis 2:18, the famous pasuk of Isaac Kenegdo, when God says, "Let me create a helpmate for God." So he writes the following: יש לנו לחקור, זאת סיבת חטא האדם, ומה שנתגלגל לו ולכללות הנבראים. He says, we must investigate what is the cause for the sin of Adam and what eventually happened to him and to the totality of creation. Because what happened to him did not affect only him, it affected all of his descendants. And we found the reason. What is it? It was the woman who caused the destruction and annihilation of the world. The serpent was able to control her, to persuade her to eat from the fruit, and to answer all of her arguments. And at that time of the dialogue with the serpent, Adam was not with her, as we learn from the pasuk. The Torah describes a dialogue between the woman and the serpent without Adam being present. ואמרו ז"ל, כי היה אדם ישן, או למאן דאמר שהיה עובר בעולם וכולי. ומצא נחש לחווה בפני עצמה והסיתה. And the rabbi said that Adam was sleeping, or other people say that he was traveling in the world. God was showing him the future generation or something of the sort. And the serpent found Hava alone and was able to entice her. So now, Haim says, he looks at the protagonist of the story. It's God, the serpent, the man, and the woman. God commanded Adam not to eat. The serpent enticed the woman to eat. So who is here to blame? So he says the fault is that of the woman, because she's the one who gave in to the argument of the serpent and ate from the fruit. But he alludes to a possibility of Adam also having a responsibility, because he was either sleeping or traveling. So he was not there with his wife to make sure that things go right. But because of that, because there's room to say that it's the woman's fault. נתחכם השם וכתב קודם לקיחת הצלע מהאדם, טעם הדבר, שכוונת השם בדבר הייתה להיטיב להאדם. So Hashem, God, is taking a preemptive strike and writes before the construction of the rib into a woman that his intention is to benefit men, meaning that I'm giving you something good, and if eventually something bad will come out of it, there's nothing we can do about it. That will be a natural outcome. והודיע הכתוב כי לא מצא עזר והוכרח לקלוע הנקבה מצידו ולעשותה כנגדו. So the Torah informed us that God did not find an appropriate helpmate for men among all animals, and had no choice but to take the rib and build it into a woman. והכוונה היא לטובת האדם, and the intention was to benefit men. ואם אחר כך יצא מה שיצא, and if eventually happened what happened, והיה זה סיבה להימצאות האישה בייחוד מבלעדי אישה, and that was because the woman was alone without her husband, והיא קישה נחש, and she was bitten by the snake, and מקום לומר למה עשה השם ככה. There's no room to say for saying why did God do that. So the intriguing part of that statement is that the Or Haim, Rabbi Haim Ovadia, describes God as pushed into a corner. It says he did not find a helpmate for men, and therefore he was forced to created the woman for him. So this is a contradiction to our to our understanding of God as omnipotent and as independent of the world, famously according to the understanding of Maimonides. And here Rabbi Haim Ovadia says that God had no choice but to do that, and therefore you cannot blame God. It's interesting how God is cleared of guilt or fault by saying that he had no other choice. Meanwhile, the woman is the one who's guilty because her husband was not with her. But we have to remember also that in the world of Rabbi Haim Ovadia, coming from the point of view of Kabbalah, the serpent represents much more than an animal or the evil inclination within God. That is a concept of Satan, or Sitra Hara, the other side, or Samael, the angel who bears the name of God but in a negative way, which is the antagonist of God. This is a concept which is not biblical. In the Bible, we find the word Satan several times before the book of Job, and it means an adversary, from the word Satan, to deviate, to go off the road. And it is only in the book of Job that we find the name Satan as one of the angels. When the angels, or Bnei Elohim, come back from surveying the land, they all come and report to God, and among them there's Satan. And God asks Satan, do you have anything special to report? And did you see Job? Etc. But the way that the Bible presents Satan is as one of the messengers who at times have this role of being the prosecutor. But later on in rabbinic literature, the idea of Satan as almost an independent entity has surfaced. This is found in Masechet Bava Batra, where the rabbi is saying in Masechet Bava Batra, page 16, side A, Taftel Zayin Amud Aleph, the Talmud discusses the story of Job and brings this pasuk: Vayomer Hashem el Satan, hasamta libcha el avdi Iyov ken kamo ba'aretz. Did you notice my servant Job? Iyov, there's none like him. But the siteni bo leval'o hinam, you have instigated me against him to cause him harm for no reason. And here the Talmud comments, Rabbi Yochanan says, Ilmale mikra katuv yefshar leomro, ki adam shemesitin oto venisat. Rabbi Yochanan says, we can only say the message of the verse because it was written. But had it not been written, we would not be allowed to say it, because this suggests that God could be influenced by outside forces. Obviously, this is not the meaning of the original text. If we look up the story of Job, we realize that Satan was not the one who instigated God against Job, but the other way around. It was God who brought up Job, and that is part of the whole story being a parable or a moral lesson to how we should serve God. But that paved the way to starting to look at Satan as almost an independent entity. And the Talmud goes on to say, "B'matnita tana, yored u'mat'eh, ole u'margiz, notel reshut v'notel neshama." Satan first comes down to earth and causes people to sin. Then he goes back to heaven and receives a permission. Ole u'margiz, and instigates God against the person, and then he receives the permission to take the life of that person. But that suggests almost Satan working on his own schedule and with his own agenda. Resh Lakish adds, Hu Satan, Hu Yetzer Hara, Hu Malach HaMavet. Satan is the evil inclination, is the angel of death. And later on, because of the influence of Christianity, with the concept of the Antichrist and and that of Gnosticism, that also had the constant confrontation, it's a dualism between the demiurgus and the creator, and Zoroastrianism with Ahura Mazda and Aharmin, the god of good and the god of evil. This concept found its way through the back door into Judaism, and in Kabbalah, Satan is almost an independent entity, and Samael is the angel of death. The name that was given to him is a combination of the word El, God, and Samech Mem, which means poison. So he bears the name of God within him, but is also poisonous. So the serpent is obviously an image there. So the struggle that Or Haim describes, it's much more than just the between the woman, the man, and the serpent, but rather between those superhuman forces that are trying to control the world. However, when we conclude the statement of Or Haim, we get to the point of putting the main weight of the blame, on the woman. From here, we're going to move to two scholars, two rabbis from Aleppo. The first is Rabbi Avraham Antabi, who lived in Aleppo from 1765 to 1858. So was born a little bit after the passing away of Rabbi Haim ben Attar. And Rabbi Avraham Antabi wrote this book called Chokhmah Musar, a book of wisdom and moral teachings. I think that the name of the book is somewhat sarcastic. I don't want to say sarcastic, but in poking fun at some people, because the full verse in Kohelet on which the name is based is Chokhmah Musar Evilim Bazu. The fools reject or eschew wisdom and moral teachings. So when Rabbi Antabi names his book Chokhmah Musar, he says, if you don't read that, you fall under the category of the Evilim, of the fools. And Rabbi Antabi speaks about gezel, about theft or robbery, and very quickly segues from the discussion to very harsh criticism against women, and particularly against the women of his time and of his society, whom he blames in that they like opulent lifestyle and they force their husbands to spend money for them. So we're reading here Perek Bet, chapter 2 of Chokhmah Musar. It's page Samech Aleph 61 in the original book and 53 in the scan. It says this: ואתה בן אדם, פקח עיניך וראה, והווה זהיר מאוד ממכשול הגזל, ותהי נקי כפיים. You must be very careful to not transgress the prohibition against theft and robbery, gezel. והן בעוון, and then he adds, שעיקר הסיבה המביאה לידי גזל ומלסתם את הבריות, the main reason that a man ends up stealing money from other people, הכל הוא מן הנשים, it is all because of women, שהן מביאות את בעליהן לידי גזל, they cause their husband to steal. וכמו שאמרו ז"ל על הפסוק, שמעונה פרות הבשן, העושקות דלים הרוצצות אביונים. There's a commentary of the rabbis on this verse. The verse is in Amos, chapter 4, verse 1. שמעונה פרות הבשן, העושקות דלים הרוצצות אביונים. Hear, O you cows of Bashan. Bashan is a fertile area in the north of Israel. You who oppress the poor, who steal from the needy. So in the original context, when you read the whole chapter, even though we use the cows in the feminine, and even later on, Isha Re'uta, a woman and her friend, it really refers to the affluent families in general and the way that they oppressed the poor. But the rabbis in the Talmud, Rava specifically, interpreted this pasuk as appropriate for the women of a certain city in Bavel, which was very affluent, and apparently he didn't like their behavior too much. And he says, who are those cows of Bashan who steal from the poor? Amar Rava, that's in Shabbat, Daf Lamed Bait Amud Bet, Shabbat 32:2. Neshei de Mehuza, de Achlan velo Avdan. Those women who are presented in negative light are the women of Mehuza, who eat but don't work. He also says in the Masechet Pesachim Nun Bet, Pesachim 52, that it says Hanei Nashei de Mehuza, lo avdan avideta b'ma'alei Shabbata, mishum mefankuta udea kol yoma nami la ka'avdan. He says one ideally should not work on Friday, and he says the women of Mehuza don't work on Friday afternoon, but it's not because they respect the Shabbat, but rather because they don't work any other day, because they are mefunakot, they are spoiled, they are too delicate, they don't want to work. So we see that he had a bone to pick with them. He's not very happy with them, but Rabbi Avraham Antebi takes this commentary and says, כמו שאנו רואים בעינינו היום הזה, דאפילו מי שאינו עשיר, we see today, in our day and time, 18th century Aleppo, that even one who is not well-to-do spends money to buy nice clothes and jewelry for his wife, יותר מכדי יכולתו, more than what he can afford, ועל כורחו דוחק את עצמו מביא לכל חפצה אשר שאלה, and against his will, he forces himself to buy her everything she's asking for. יען שכל אישה אינה צרה בחברתה והיא מתקנאה ממנה, because they are jealous of their friends who wear precious clothes. מריבה עם בעלה, she fights with her husband and yells at him night and day until he brings her that which he asked for, even though she knows, יודעת ומכירה, שאין ביד בעלה יכולת כחברו, that her husband is not capable to buy the same things as his husband does. עם כל זה היא דוחקתו. With all that, she forces him to do that. Now, if you stop here, you could say, well, this is the husband's responsibility as well. If he feels that he cannot afford that, he should sit down and calculate and plan. And one cannot blame all on the women. But Rabbi Antabi goes on to say a general statement about women, which is very derogatory. Ki lo ambinot henna veda'atan kalot. Women in general do not possess great wisdom, and they are light-headed. But he uses the term lo ambinot henna. They are a nation. As a nation, they do not have wisdom. This term ambinot, a nation of wisdom, is borrowed from Isaiah chapter 27, where Isaiah speaks about the enemies of Israel and calls them lo ambinot. But here he takes this term and applies it to women, and describing women as a whole nation, as that nation categorically does not possess wisdom. And because of that, because she demands what he describes as unreasonable demands, her husband must go and borrow money, and then he cannot pay, and then he must descend into theft and robbery. And he's controlled by women. This is similar to the argument of Rabbi Haim ben Atar against the woman eating from the fruit. If she ate from the fruit, her husband did not have to eat from the fruit, blaming everything on her. If in this case, one cannot argue that he was forced to steal or to embezzle or to be corrupt in business because his wife wanted certain things. If he feels that that's the line, that's the boundary that he would not cross, and he would not commit a crime in order to support a certain lifestyle, that's his decision. But the blame is rolled back here to the woman. V'chama ba'alei batim, goes on Rabbi Antabi to say, V'chama ba'alei batim yardu min yachsehem ba'avur neshehem. We know many people lost their possessions because of their wives, and they are more foolish than their wives. Because if they were intelligent, they would not listen to them, and they would bring them back from their evil path. Especially in this generation, שבכל שנה ושנה יוצאות הנשים בעניין חדש במלבושיהם, ופוסלים את הבגדים הראשונים של שנה שעברה. It says in our generation, every year, each and every year, the women come up with a new fad, with a new fashion, and the clothes, the new clothes of last year are not worthy anymore. They throw them, they put them aside, and they want to wear new garments. Interesting. This is written in at around the 1800s. So we think that this fast-moving fashion is a problem of today. He said there was a problem of his time as well, and probably of generations before. This, we will see it again. We saw it before. This nostalgic tone of saying in the past everything was perfect, everything was good. It's only this generation, and he says ve'ania. And poor women want to behave like the rich women. וכמה פעמים השתדלנו לבטל דבר זה מאנשים ולא יכולנו. Says we tried to convince the women to educate them not to do that, but we were unable. מפני שגם בעליהם נתפתו אחריהם, because their husbands followed in their path. וילך מנוח אחרי אשתו. This verse that is taken from Shoftim, from the book of Judges, in the description of the events that led to the birth of Shimshon. This is an example of how Rabbi Antabi, we saw it before, also peppers his lecture with the references to the Bible and to the commentary on the Bible, that if you know it well, you realize how deep is the criticism here. In the Tanakh, in its original context, the angel reveals himself to Manoah, his wife, in the field, and in the second time that happens, she goes and calls her husband, and the Bible says, "Vayelech Manoah harei ishto," and he followed her, which is the natural thing to do. She calls him, and she's going to show him where the encounter takes place. The rabbis comment on that, saying, "Manoah am haaretz haya." Manoah was an ignoramus, because he followed her to the place. And in the Talmud, Masechet Brachot, Samech Aleph Amud Aleph 61:1, this is a statement presented by Rav Nachman. Manoach ha'aretz haya dichtiv v'elech manoach harei ishto. He was an ignoramus because he followed his wife to the field. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak opposes his statement, and he brings other examples about Elkanah and Elisha. Would you call them ignoramuses? But rather, Harei Dvareh v'harei Atzata, when following he followed her words, he followed her advice, or followed her to the field. So, but the Talmud continues to discuss that statement. It says, but Rav Nachman said that he was an ignoramus. Didn't he see the other psukim, the other verses that were presented by his opponent? So the answer of the Talmud to that is that not only he didn't know the psukim, afilu beirav nami lo kara, he didn't even know the halachot that are taught in the Bet Midrash, because there is a halacha handed over by the name of Rabbi Yochanan, ahorei ari velo ahorei isha. It is better to walk behind a lion and not behind a woman. That is a very negative statement. Of course, it stems from the whole idea of hirurim, of that everything, every side, every situation that compromises the man's purity of mind would lead him to think of sexual interaction and probably in a forbidden manner. It's called hirurei arayot. But to say it such a manner that one should rather walk behind a lion and not behind a woman, and this is something that is still taught and practiced in some Orthodox circles. That this is how in some places there are even separate sidewalks for men and women. So when Rabbi Antabi makes reference to this verse, Vayelech Manoach Harei Ishto, is not just quoting a pasuk from Judges, from Shoftim, but rather he alludes to the whole discussion in the Talmud that presents Manoach as an ignoramus who follows his wife's advice and her words, and maybe walks after her in an immodest way. And this is how he describes the women of his generation and their husbands. And here comes the expected nostalgic statement, וכל זה לא היה בדור שלפנינו. That never happened in the previous generation. אשר לא ראו אבותינו, and our forefathers never saw that. אלא אדרבה, כל הנשים היו נותנות יקר לבעליהן ואינן סרות ממשמעתן, אפילו כחוט השערה. Rather, all women would greatly respect their husbands and would listen to them and obey them in everything. And they were all wise women who would dress according to their ability, לובשת לפי יכולתה וחסה על דוחקו של בעלה, and would not dare to cause her husband financial duress, ולא תענה קנאת החרות על ליבה לקנות ממעשי העשירים. She would never be jealous of others and try to be like the rich people. ולא ידעתי איך נהפכו עתה בדור הזה. I do not understand how they turned over completely in our generations and have no mercy for their husbands. And that nostalgic statement, as I mentioned before, very common in works of education, morals, ethics, not only among Jews, among educators, preachers, religious, not religious. There's always this nostalgic tone of saying that in the past things were better. And in my experience, this happens because usually people only compare to the immediate history. When they say in the past, they mean what my father told me, my grandfather told me, my great-grandfather told me. It's about 100 years. This is how far as our memory stretches without being assisted with books or other sources. But if one does the research, and because, for example, on this topic of the obedience of women for men and the tendency to dress with to spend lavishly on clothes, we know that it was not a phenomenon that was unique to the time of Rabbi Avraham Antebi. The prophet Isaiah in chapter 3 rebukes the women of his time for dressing excessively. We know that during the Golden Age in Spain, there were rabbis who criticized both men and women, especially from the circle of the courtiers, the Jews who worked closely with the royal courts for living a lavish lifestyle. And in Megillat Esther, the book of Esther, we see how the ministers of Ahasuerus seized the opportunity of Vashti rebelling against the king to try and establish a royal decree that would demand women to obey their husbands. So this nostalgic tone, saying in the past everything was perfect, is obviously not in place. But this is something that is usually done by educators, preachers, and authors of books of morality and ethical values. He concludes this discussion by saying, "Lachen anshe levav shim'u li, you whose heart is open, listen to me. Husu v'rahamu al atzmechem, have mercy on yourselves. Ve'al telchu ba'atzat neshechem, and don't follow the advice of your women, of your wives. Le'apil, because what they will do to you, they will le'apil etchem bereshet hagezel, that will make you fall into the net, into the trap of robbery. Le'ha'avir etchem al da'at kolchem, they, the women, will cause you to go against God, to transgress the Torah. They will cause you le'abed mikem kol yemei hayechem, you will lose your life in this world. U'le'resh etchem gehinom, and you will go to Gehinom, to hell, in the world to come." So those are very powerful words, and again, all the blame is on the women. We will see later on other comments from Rabbi Avraham Antebi, more in the legal field, where in some cases he defends the rights of women. Here, he's fighting a phenomenon that is happening in Aleppo and could have been really deviation from the previous generation or two generations before him. A lot of this has to do with the influx of the Spanish exiles who came to Aleppo and brought with them their tradition and customs. We'll see later on that caused halachic debates between the local communities of the people of Aleppo and the foreigners whom they called Señores Francos, the European gentlemen, because they came from Spain. And the Señores Francos had their own practices in terms of modesty and how women are allowed to talk to other men or stroll outside, etc. And that caused tension within the community and could have been a deviation from the practice of a generation or two generations before. But as I said, when you go further enough in history, you see that this is has always existed. With that, we conclude our reading of Chokhmah Musar, and in our next session, we'll look at the writing of another rabbi from Aleppo, a little after Rabbi Avraham Antabi, and that is Rabbi Avraham Dayan in his book Holech Tamim.